a different way. We are a place where ideas come and working groups start. So we like to think of we're kind of like an incubator where we're a garden, and ideas come and working groups grow from there, and we water them. Sometimes they take off and they do wonderful things on their own. Sometimes they stick around a little bit further. But we have partners from the United Nations to the World Academy of Arts and Sciences. We have representation from Indigenous wisdom, from academia, from government, and from obviously the capital markets and Wall Street, and alike. So today, what we're really addressing is a working group that has come from one of our leaders, Patricia Clower, who you'll hear from in a moment, and it is addressing the attention economy and really framing what the importance of that is from our perspective is, obviously in order to be conscious, you first have to be awake. And as you know, a lot of the social marketing world is hijacking our limbic system from a lot of sleepwalkers out there for revenue. And so really addressing the attention economy is at the core of managing the opportunities and threats of this next revolution, which I'm calling the fourth revolution. We talk about the first revolution being, the steam engine, which began the Industrial Revolution. And the second really electricity, which is TV and other things that grew from there. And then, of course, our high-tech revolution, which is the internet, space program, and computers. And now moving into this fourth revolution, which is AI, biotech, and nanotech, which is going to transform our world. And so really, this is pretty much lays it up to you, Patty, and your beautiful team that have been working at this working group for a while. I want to just repeat again what Heather said at the beginning. The first half is going to be Patty leading this in an overview and her team about what this is all about, what this working group is all about. And the second half is the purpose for your participation. We want to hear your voice. The working group wants to hear your voice and participation. And we're very delighted because I see a lot of the faces here from some significant leaders in the globe around this space. So thank you everybody for coming. Patty, off to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Lawrence. What I would like to do before I get started is just to lead us all in just a moment of silence. We like to start all of our future Capitol meetings that way. So everybody, may I ask you just to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and we're just going to take a short moment of silence just to presence all of us together here in this call. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. It's really great to see all the familiar faces and so many new faces. So that's awesome. So as Lawrence and Heather both said, I'm going to provide some background, and then I want to introduce our core team. And we plan for the last 30 minutes of this call to be open discussion, so we can talk about all of this. So the history of this working group is that we began with a meeting very similar to this about 2 years ago. And when I acknowledged the importance of the attention economy in a short, talk, and Chantaline Carpentier, the UN New York City chief of UNCTAD, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, followed up with me on that and said, tell me more about this. Let's talk about this. So what happened was from that is that Chantaline brought this to a group within the UN, the New Economies for Sustainable Development, and wrote an article about it. And then we formed a working group inside the UN and have been focused, and we were focused there initially. But then we decided this year to form a working group, of a multi-stakeholder working group outside of the UN as well, so that we would have this permeable membrane between the UN and the rest of the world to be able to really gather the broad thinking about principles around an attention economy. And so that's kind of the history of this. And we decided to focus on key principles that can be seeds for creative adaptation into business models, next generation technology, policies, course curriculum. So it's a very broad, it's intended to be a broad audience for this, but it's also intended to be for first and second movers, so to speak, in each of those fields, people who are already thinking about the attention economy and how to make a difference. So the other thing I wanted to point out is, as we thought about these principles and the design for presenting them, we wanted to both walk our talk, respect the attention of our audience, and we sought to embody indigenous principles, which we consider universal principles, such as reciprocity, mutual benefit, honoring one another and the earth, and respect for individuals, but not at the expense of the commons. So rather than appropriating, the language or symbols from any single indigenous culture, we sought to reflect these values in modern language in the digital space we occupy. And I want to thank Amani's guidance in the design process for that. So we are a diverse team of volunteers who definitely have a self-interest in that we want to engage in a digital world that works for all. And we are part of communities, and we are technology developers and project facilitators and application developers and designers who are creating online technologies and worlds built on these principles. So let me just introduce the core team first, okay? We have, let me see, I'm not going to go from top of screen, because from my top of screen is Chris, and he's going to walk you through the principles. So I'm going to do him last. So Elisa Gus, Elisa wave. Elisa is the CEO and co-founder of Wishnish, a distributed ledger technology company that's responding to a global need for transparency, democracy, and accessibility in software. And Fasa, there you go. Fasa is an unconventional thinker. He has a goal of collaborating with others to improve the way that people experience the attention economy. And he's developed really innovative ways to use technology, and is currently focused on a project that brings local government, NGOs, corporations, and small businesses together to address chronic food poverty in Pittsburgh. It's a pretty exciting project. Gotham Wadakapat. I did it, Gotham. He is an associate professor in marketing at George Mason University of Business, School of Business, and his research focuses on business and marketing for a better world. Amani and I. So Amani has been working on the intersection of finance, design, technology, and culture. And her current focus is on information design, open source innovation models, regenerative economics, and exploring Web 3.0 for a better world. And Amani is responsible for the design of our document and presenting the principles. Thanks, Amani. Okay, and finally, Chris Derfler is a pioneer in sustainable innovation within the advertising and media industry. He focuses on improving trust between businesses and people in a way that empowers individuals, society, and the natural world. And with Chris, I'm going to hand it over because Chris is going to walk through the actual principles with you so that you can kind of have an understanding of what we're doing. We have a document and a design that we can share with you after this. What our intention is right now is this is not our launch. This is our kind of quiet sharing with our future capital community, because we launched this working group a year ago with you, and we wanted to report to you that we've got our initial draft. So what we've recognized with the diversity of our group is that diverse ideas and experiences really will make a better product. So we want to open it up and get a lot of feedback. So we actually have a survey as well. And I'll make sure we get this document and the survey link to all of you who are interested in supporting us by reading it and doing that. But so without further ado, let me hand it over to you, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Patty. And nice to see you all. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. It's something that matters dearly to me. And I'm sure everyone here, but certainly everyone in our group. So I just want to say thank you in addition to what Patty said. Start sharing my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So just kind of starting off with one thing. Sorry, let me set this. Starting with one thing is I will make some assumptions here that, when they say things like UN SDGs and stuff like that, that is something that all of you are very familiar with. And certain things around the attention economy might make some assumptions. So to set ahead of time, I apologize if something is unclear. Feel free to just ping us or bring it up later. More than happy to address those type of things. So with that being said, also Lawrence is talking about conscious capitalism, right? So we're here to talk about the conscious attention economy, and part of why, just to hit the idea home of why there's a strong overlap there, is we consider advertising and a lot of the models that are related to advertising to be the financial model of the flow of most information in societies, right? So if you're going to address information issues such as misinformation and such, you can't do that without addressing advertising and the larger attention economy. So I'm actually going to start with this slide. With that being said, the traditional attention economy, so people might ask, what is the difference, right? The traditional attention economy commodifies and extracts value from human attention for any purpose and through any medium with a focus on profit over human values. The real important word here is extractive, right? It's almost like, we're being mined, our attention is being mined, and so on and so forth. There's something being taken from us with not necessarily attention being given to what we're receiving in return. And so a conscious attention economy is defined by reciprocity, where all stakeholders benefit and business models are generative rather than extractive. Meaning is that as this mission is accomplished more effectively, all stakeholders have increased value. And the real important word there is generative, right? We're trying to say that there's a lot of ideas out there as to the future of how we should address the internet, if you will. And we're not trying to put our stake in the sand and say there's one way to go, but there's actually many solutions. And as long as those solutions are geared towards improving the value for people, then that is something to be leaned into. So this image, before I go into the principles, I also want to highlight, this is the image that is meant to capture almost everything of what we're talking about here. And so to spend a little bit of time here, you have the UN SDGs on the outside, right? And so one of the things that we've seen, UN SDGs are fantastic. A lot of really, preach the choir, that one. But one of the things that we saw is there's not necessarily the medium to implement them within the attention economy, right? So for example, when you're talking about good health and well-being or climate action, peace and justice and strong institutions, what does that mean when it comes to advertising and journalism and so on and so forth in terms of the actionable steps and the way that people should be designing things? So then you see, so one of our goals was to take it a step further and put those actionable steps into a framework that people can work off of. So then you have this star here, which is the stakeholders. What we're trying to highlight there is that everyone needs to work together in harmony, right? There needs to be a conjoining of people and of different institutions rather than what is currently happening, which is these groups tend to work in silos and tend to be very judgmental of the other groups or dismissive. And that needs to change to a large degree if we're going to achieve success. And then you'll see our principles on the inside, which I'll go into more specifically in a second here, but those are meant to highlight, how the stakeholders can apply the SDGs or what they should do in order to implement the SDGs. And then you'll see the person at the center, because at the end of the day, the individual and the collective individuals are the heart of this. And if we always focus on them and making that well-being, that the center of our goals, we will achieve success. Or at least, yeah, that's the goal, right? Because one of the things we're trying to say here is this is not the answer. This is in that road of generating more answers and trying to, there's a lot of views of what the bad internet is, right? A lot of these Ready Player One type things. We think there needs to be more conversations and more examples of what a healthy internet system and attention economy would look like. So again, before I go into the principles, just want to highlight this as an example of this is something I've done similarly I work for multi-billion-dollar companies in the advertising space, many of the top 20 brands in the world. And one of the things that we put together was this idea, this is meant to capture the entire advertising process. So if you're an advertising professional, this is meant to hit home to you the different stages that need to be considered when trying to develop a regenerative and sustainable advertising campaign. So some of this might seem esoteric to some of the folks, but if you work in advertising, a lot of this will click off the bat in terms of the fact that these are the different stages. And so what I'm trying to hit home here is these stages traditionally don't include things like sustainability or value-based systems and promoting transparency. So if we start to design these processes in each one of the professionals that work in each one of these stages, we can create a better system. Specifically for advertising companies. I'm going to skip over some of this stuff again, making some assumptions. These are the stakeholders. Actually, I'm going to skip over that because I'm going to call back to that later. So going into our principles now. This is the meat of what we're going to be talking about, or this is the meat of the whole presentation. This is meant to be the guidelines that we're talking about for people to take note of when trying to engage in decision making when it comes to advertising, right? Whether or not it's create a new product, make a decision in terms of how to reach somebody, run a company, those type of things. It's meant to inform. It's meant to inform for people who are looking for answers as to how to be more ethical and regenerative. So without further ado, we have 10 of them. Now, our goal is to, as you can imagine, we whittled this down quite a bit to get the language as accurate as we can. So our hope is that this comes across as very succinct. However, one of the things that we're also open to as we send this out to you all after this is, to provide any feedback on the language, on the principles themselves, because we ultimately want to make sure that it's communicated effectively, right? It's not just an encoding, or it's not just a decoding issue, it's an encoding thing, right? So the first one is individual sovereignty. This is the principle that is really focused on the individual and the fact that they should control their experience online and their data. The first bullet here, which is I'm going to call the sub principles, not to get confusing for anyone, but these are the sub principles where attention sovereignty is really about the control of your attention, right? You should be able to, if someone is making money off of or actually that's the next one. If someone is making decisions off of your attention, they need to consult with you first, and you should be, at the end of the day, have full ability to take anything away that you don't want other people to have access to. The next one here is right to reward. As people on this call are very familiar with, I imagine, there's an enormous amount of money being made in advertising. Google and Facebook, the majority of their money comes from advertising. And that money was, to some degree, created on their own, but a lot of it was actually taken or clawed from other companies, such as local journalism, that that they took the eyeballs from, right? And also from the people who generated the data that they're using and the overall their time, right? That's what attention ultimately is your time spent engaged. And so people should have a right to the monetary aspects or the rewards of what comes out of that. That could come in many different forms, and we can talk about that more later, but that's something that should be built in. The next one, something that might be new to people here, but is fiduciary responsibility of delegated data managers. Right now, people, if Facebook, Google, or any, the slew of other companies manage your data, they have no legal right or legal obligation to act in your best interest, right? They have certain things that they have to get permission for, but there's a lot of wiggle room. So one of the things we think is needed is to add a degree of safety and fiduciary, let's call it fiduciariality. I don't know if that's a word, but making sure that their people have a way to, receive answers. And then this last piece here, digital colonialism. We've heard a lot about Facebook and their content moderation, right, and political issues. Most of that happens in English. However, if you can imagine, if you have a language that is not as spoken around the world and there are content moderation issues, it's not really addressed. And that is a huge issue, as well as people in these in some countries that, for example, Facebook does not reside in. I'm not to keep using Facebook, but that's something everyone knows. They have no recourse, right, for Facebook. And so that is something that needs to be rectified. And I'm going to go with these a little faster because I was realizing on time. So the harmlessness is the second one. This one is really about being respectful of the human being who is interacting with the space. So we need to be respectful of their dignity, which goes to really about not exposing people, not just about violating their human rights, but not exposing them to extremism or hate. There's a lot of algorithms that double down on those because they garner a lot of attention. And that is why we need to move away from just, monetizing the attention and really taking more stock of the type of attention that we're garnering. Respectful of time. A lot of the apps now, particularly if you work in advertising, they all tout how much time they get their users to spend on the app. They're all trying to get more and more people to spend time in their app. A lot of times there's not a discussion as to whether or not it's a good thing for people to be doing, right? We shouldn't just be going towards, I need to get more and more people on my app, which leads people to be psychologically manipulative. And we should be more respectful of what is the proper amount of time people should be spending and how do we encourage them to leave when it's the right time. Intentional by design and purposeful by design, I'll kind of touch on these at the same time. This is really the idea that you should be being sure to prove intent in the entire system, not just the fact that you garnered eyeballs, but that the person wanted to be there ahead of time and that there was conscious decision making, right? Which involves transparent consent. And then purposeful by design means you should have to be able to explain yourself at all times. If I'm taking your data, I should be able to, I should have to tell you why I'm taking your data and then what I will and will not do with it. The next one, data privacy and data protection. This one probably is pretty straightforward to everyone here. Inherent privacy, that goes without being without much explanation. Data minimization, one of the things that we've seen is that companies oftentimes, or organization, all different groups, collect data first and then decide what to deal with it after. And so as a result, I think over 90% of data goes unused. One, that's enormous environmental footprint from all the electricity costs, but it also means we're just gathering data on people that is oftentimes intrusive that we don't even need. So that needs to be minimized and there needs to be more of a goal of that. And then protection from artificial intelligence, right? That we've chosen not to do too much in artificial intelligence and open to people's ideas on that around this deck, mainly because it's its own topic and that deserves its own line of principles, if you will. But we did want to at least touch on it because it is highly relevant to the advertising space, particularly when you use the word algorithm, right? Which is synonymous in many different ways, but there's an enormous amount of algorithms used in advertising, and those need to be more safe. Transparency. So you need transparency of access. You need to make sure that you need to make sure that the average person knows how to control their online experience. You can't just say we put a tool in there that allows someone to reduce the amount of ads, or if someone knows how to click these 4 different links and look up this very complicated article, they could finally figure it out. No, it needs to be very clear to your average person that how to manage their attention online, and that needs to be tools that are readily accessible. Transparency of risk. People need to know that they are exposing themselves online to certain things. They also need to know that if, for data breaches, financial risks, a whole bunch of different slew of things, those need to be more transparent to people. Transparency of economic and social value. This is similar to the right to reward, but in addition to the right to reward, it should be very transparent to people what their data is worth, right? If Facebook is going to be monetizing your data, they should tell you, in my opinion, that your data is worth $30 for the course of the year, and you should earn a portion of that, let's say. And then trustful by design. This is similar to intentional and purposeful by design, but we wanted to highlight this as different because there needs to be an emphasis not on, again, extracting attention, but building trust into systems. So the entire process needs to be built around how do we establish greater trust with people for long-term profit rather than short-term gain. And yeah, so the next one is accountability. This is really about shared standards and metrics. The governance is related to that, really, but there needs to be appropriate audits from the right sources, right? It needs to be third-party sources. There can't the grading your own homework thing that's gone on for the past, however long, is not working. We've all seen that. So there needs to be less grading our own homework. Google, again, not trying to rip on anyone, but Google judges their own advertising success. So obviously they're going to come across as the best. Shared standards, we need shared standards. And then standard metrics, not that there aren't standardized metrics, but really the standard metrics need to be different. They need to be well-being based. They need to promote social, societal, and cultural awareness, and need to overall be based on promoting human values rather than just what gets someone to click on something. Now, part of why it gets someone to click on something now is because of, to my experience, lack of imagination. So I think we just need to, it's more of a pushing the boundary rather than it's not possible. Fairness and inclusivity. This is really around the social aspects, right? So the first principle is around the individual, protecting individuals and what we need to do to improve individual sovereignty. This one is all around what do we need to do to take stock of how the individual fits into the larger society, and as Patty brought in earlier, enhance individuals, but not at the expense of the larger group. So common infrastructure. There needs, again, there are certain things like social media and so on and so forth. There should be public. There should be public tools for, many aspects of the internet that currently are not public goods should be. And even in those cases where it warrants, and we'll go into this later also, the idea of portability. But even when it warrants having common infrastructure and private infrastructure, the two should be compatible with each other and allow for interoperability. Social fairness of benefits. Now, again, this is similar to the right to reward, or some of the things we brought before. But really that from the community standpoint, the benefits of the internet and the attention economy need to be shared. We've all heard about the the digital divide, or many of us have. There hasn't been as much talking about the attention divide, attention education divide, maybe perhaps more specifically, whereas the rewards from how people are spending their visual or spending how people are engaging with the world is not being Facebook and Google are making a lot of the money, whereas a lot of low-income Americans, for example, have no idea that that's happening, and so they're not receiving any of the awards that they know they should, or that we know they should be. Supporting quality journalism and information. This, again, making an assumption here, but local news has taken a huge hit around the world, definitely here in the United States. And so advertising needs to spend more energy supporting local and quality journalism. There needs to be an emphasis on not just the fact that we need to get a certain amount of money out of this, but this is a societal good. So how do we make sure as professionals and as government groups and all the education sources that is something that does not go away? And then equitable access. This is really just because we need the internet to be free, but that does not mean that people should be exploited simply because they're using a free source. Freedom from exploitation is similar to the last thing I was just saying here, but fraud awareness, this is about individual and business fraud. There needs to be awareness on all sides, and there needs to be agreements and vigorousness. I'm blanking out. Vigilance, and from all these different groups in order to address it, right? And so that business, because for example, I think it was 4 years ago, but something like Uber was losing around over $100 million in fraud advertising, simply because the system had so much fraud. So it is an enormous financial drain, as well as it's causing issues for individuals in terms of privacy issues. Exploitation of awareness. We need to be sure that we're not only respecting people's time and their human rights, but also being sure to not exploit them, even when it does not violate a law. And also even when the individual is not the primary audience. For example, even if a space is not designed for children, there's a good chance children are going to be using it. And so that needs to be taken into stock, as well as on the flip side of children, one of the things that we emphasize is oftentimes older American or older citizens of different countries are less digitally savvy than teenagers, right? And so there needs to be an overall understanding of who the vulnerable groups are and how do we respect them. And then the last one from here is balanced. There needs to be a high standard of quality for user-generated content, as well as professional journalism, right? So there needs to be, as well as showing diverse points of view. So the idea is quality, and if you have diversity and quality, you have good information, or quality information from diverse points of view, you have good information. So that's ultimately something that needs to be there in order for the advertising system to be a success.
Chris, can we just kind of go through the next 2 slides real quickly, because we want to engage the audience?
Yeah, I know what slide.
Okay, because we're kind of over time.
Yeah, sounds good.
So don't go through every point, just kind of general.
Yeah, sounds good. So this one, harmony with nature, kind of goes perhaps a little bit without saying, but the idea, the one I'll highlight here is wildlife as a stakeholder. Wildlife should be, if people are making money off of wildlife imagery and so on and so forth, wildlife should be earning a reward from that, as well as we should be taking stock of the environmental impact of the attention systems. Attention literacy, this is really coming down to the education side, and that we need to, as a society and as organizations, we need to promote individual literacy when it comes to attention, right? How do people use it? How's attention best used? How do you take ownership of it? Again, preaching to the choir here, but really, how do you encourage consciousness through the attention system, and how do you promote that through advertising and other methods? This last one here, the 10th one, is the adaptive systems. Talking about cultural and technological preparedness, right? This is the idea that this document also is not meant to be the end all be all, and that we have to constantly evolve and adapt in order to meet the needs of the future. So every year, every few months, whatever it is, all these things need to be reevaluated, and that we need to, and the systems need to be adapting to the needs of individuals and culture. And then the portability side, which is everything should, just because it's an Amazon doesn't mean it can't go somewhere else. And I won't go into this one really, but just to highlight, when you do get this, this is meant to highlight all the different layers of how do you create a healthy digital experience. And what we mean by that is, imagine you were walking through a digital forest and versus a real life forest, and what makes a quality ecosystem, what makes a quality experience in the physical world. We wanted to take that idea and apply it to the digital world. So this is our layers of what builds a digital forest. And with that, that is everything. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and appreciate you letting me run over.
Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate you. I know it's hard because it's just, we spent a year just kind of reducing all of this into a concise conversation. So we really want to take this time right now before we wrap up everything to, engage everyone. So I already see a hand from Chris. So Chris, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, and by the way, excellent presentation. Thank you for laying all that out, Chris. One of the things what came out to me is that the heaviest lift in all of this is the fiduciary responsibility. But speaking from a software development perspective, I believe that users govern, meaning users' popularity is what really gets things to shift. And one of the things I've noticed over the time is that utility is what creates value. In other words, P.T. Barnum said it best years ago when he probably defined this space, when he said there's a sucker born every minute. Of course, he created attention as entertainment, but then it's quickly reverted to annoyance when advertisers started showing things that you didn't want to see. Google and Facebook showed you more stuff that you wanted to see, but it's still annoyance because they're not sharing the reward. Anyway, my point is that I think utility built in that people actually want is where attention ultimately goes. So our goal should be creating passive utility that benefits people's lives. Anyway, I just want to share that comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I think you're going to see vigorous nods from all of us on that.
Yeah, and
I'm watching Fasa because that's his thing.
And also just one thing, Chris, that completely agree. And one of the things that is a core part of the approach that from like an advertising standpoint is, or one of the ethos is, I believe at least the majority of people in the world want to do the right thing, right? It's a little too tough to do the right thing right now, right? For example, oftentimes it costs more money to buy the environmentally friendly product rather than less, right? It requires more energy to use an intention system that is more respectful of your time than less energy, right? And to your point, that needs to be flipped on its head, and it isn't there yet. But I will also say one of the conversations that I work with companies to help hit home also for why from their standpoint, it's a good reason to lean into developing these new technologies is ultimately, if I'm verifying the data that you have on me, and then you can use that to advertise to me or people like me, the data is much higher quality and is hopefully much more useful for advertising. And so hopefully by flipping that paradigm and saying, hey, you are also not getting quality data, how do we, if you have this one-to-one conversation, it'll be a better experience for all parties involved is part of the approach we're taking.
TJ, is your hand raised?
Yeah, hi, nice to meet everybody. I'm actually a CTO of a social network app called Vero, and it's funny that you brought up a few things. One of the things you brought up was time in app. I think we were one of the first apps to have time in app, not to get you in longer, but to let you know how long you've been in. So attention economy is something that we've thought about for a long time. And I have two children, two boys, one who's 20, actually he's not a boy anymore, he's a man, but one who's 12. And apps like TikTok, Instagram, I mean, those are, Snapchat, we build a social network app. So we're looking at those as competitors in the same space. And they've taken it to a level of Las Vegas casino design where engagement has become very addictive and it's actually very bad. It's very dangerous actually. And I don't want to be dark, but you brought up the whole forest, analogy. And I read an article just the other day where a lady summed it up well. She called it the dark forest. And this is something that I've been talking about. I tell my son about every day. I tell him that there's soon coming a future where you will not be able to tell what is real and what is not real online. And it's accelerating at a pace that's stupendous, actually. When you see the artwork that's generated by AI, when you see what ChatGPT can do, it's very soon that we will not be able to tell whether anybody on this Zoom call is real or not. And that's a scary thing to think about. But as a technologist, I understand that we have to change that. We have to develop systems that allow authenticity and trust and truth to transmit across these tools, or we should just put all these tools down and go back to the old system. And so I've been working in the tech space for a long, long time. I worked at Apple where originally I was on the iPod team. So we kind of helped to develop these devices. So the iPod team with 30 people eventually became the iPhone team and all of the things that we use daily. So I feel a little bit responsible for helping to change that. And it's really good to see that what you guys have done. The deck is beautiful and all of the points are absolutely salient. They're very, very important. And I think the more people that you can get to understand and think that way, especially the more technologists, because they're building that layer for you. And it takes someone with some sort of moral compass or insight to say, how do I build this? What are the side effects of this? Just putting a like button on something creates a massive side effect. And if you're not careful about those side effects, you can cause undue problems in society. And that's what we're seeing right now, because we have all suddenly been wired to this world of we've never physically met, but we can all meet each other online. And this is a very rapid change in the way societies form and the way they put structure together. So if we're not careful, we can create the wrong kind of structures.
TJ,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your attention, for being part of this call, and for your background and experience is, so valuable and so important. And I think everyone on this call really appreciates you weighing in on this. And I think someone asked on the chat, what was the name of your social network app? They didn't catch it when you mentioned it. So can you add that
Yeah,
there?
it's called Vero, and you can just find it on vero.co, vero.co. And you guys can go find me and connect with me, and I'll get you verified and approved and whatever you want. If you need help with it, let me know.
Thank you. That's great. Paulo.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm very excited with the conversation. So very nice meeting you all. One of the things, and building on what the line that TJ was suggesting somehow, as I heard it, right? There are a lot of apps and a lot of technologists already pointing out on the right direction. And I think it would be super useful to add some of these powerful examples at the end, because it conveys the idea that it's not only possible, but it's already happening. And I think this would be powerful in order to materialize some of the ideas, because they might seem vague, but if you come up with very good examples, that could be a powerful addition to the deck.
Thank you so much, Paulo. We agree. And we've started to gather some of those resources. And anyone here who wants to contribute, please send us, info that you have, anyone that, whether it's a URL, an app like TJ's, business that you feel is working in alignment, a community. We want to actually start to highlight and share. The thing though is that we're all volunteers. We did this over the last year, along with our day job. So we realized that we have two big questions in addition to asking all of you to basically review for the content and give us good feedback so we can make these principles strong. We're asking for ideas about who else should be looking at them that we haven't thought about. Someone who might be a thought leader or someone who's thinking about these things, please share. And we'd like to get that feedback. And then number two is ideas about how to get this out into the world, how to get it out into businesses that can help guide how they're developing their business models. I mean, what we intend is for this to be seeds for a very creative. We just haven't seen the imagination and the creativity that's possible, because I think the privatization of the internet has kind of dampened the creativity that was coming out of the internet in the early days. And so what we're trying to encourage is a whole new eon, a whole new generation, a whole new way of thinking about what's possible with an online world when we use these principles as a world that works for all. And we know it's possible because we know people, some of the people who are on our own team have developed technology that have these principles in place. So we know it's possible. And so anyway, off my soapbox. Stuart.
Yeah, I'll jump on another soapbox here. We'll be slipping down the hillside together on our bars of soap. One, I just want to really appreciate the presentation, Chris. That was a wonderful kind of ecosystem array of the quest here, which is to arrive at kind of a universal synthesis of how we as humans are most optimally able to flourish in this 21st century we find ourselves in. And I wanted to hearken back to the work that, Stephen Loving was there, myself, Hazel, Janine Benyus. We, did one of these brainstorming sessions that resulted in the principles of ethical biomimicry finance. And when we're talking about a set of universal principles, I really feel like, we have to go look at biomimetic, the biomimetic foundation, the biosphere that we operate within, to try to reroute this technological cloud that we've created through our really incredible imaginal conceptualization. We're really good at decoupling from the natural systems that support life. And we're feeling the consequences of that with our internet age that we're in. So how do we reroute back into these biomimetic principles so that we actually are living an integral life consistent with the forces that drive evolution in nature? And Chris, one of the things that I think we're all in a trap for, in my world, in the world of investment management, everybody is being benchmarked against a standard. And the standard itself does not reflect a life-giving set of metrics, right? So we're all seeking to compare ourselves to a standard or a benchmark that does not reflect the underlying life principles that support our biosphere. In a similar way, in the model that you put forward about standard metrics, within that, I caught the term of, human well-being and social and cultural values. But I think we need to recognize that nature is infinitely diverse. What works for a dung beetle out in the Moroccan desert has nothing whatsoever to do with, a butterfly in the Amazonian jungle. And I think we need to really be thinking, when we're talking about universal principles, this concept that Janine Benyus brought up in her book, Biomimicry, which is to be locally attuned and responsive. So while we want universal principles, we really have to give agency to our local communities to imagine and invent that locally contextually relevant solution for them. And we're all in a technocratic mindset of this universal internet and global communication, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I think we need to be actually working towards, maybe you've heard this concept of the splinter net, which actually more accurately allows locally tuned solutions for those communities of practice. It's kind of
Stuart, that is awesome. Those are really great comments. I'm really totally in alignment with you on all of that. Thank you so much.
I'll put the principles of ethical biomimicry finance in the chat for people to review. Perfect.
Also, I wanted to mention that Hazel, our dear Hazel Henderson, was really part of the beginning of this working group. She inspired me, and when I met Chris, the three of us got together while Chris was proposing innovation in his advertising agency. So, we're sorry to miss her now, but I just wanted to acknowledge that she was coining some of these concepts around the attention economy, many, many, many years ago. And, her inspiration continues to inspire us. So I know that we're going to be wrapping up soon. So if there's anyone else who has something burning they want to say, please raise your hand. And then I want to wrap up, and I want to make sure that everyone knows how we can get the principles to you and the link to the survey. The survey is really short, just a few questions, and then room for you to type, text. And it's really going to be important to us to receive that. Veronica.
Hi. So I would love to have an application that would help me focus so that I have a certain number of goals I want to accomplish this month, this year, this week, whatever. And anything else that's really important for me to see goes on another portion, but I have the trunk, right? And then diverse points of view, things that I should know about, things that I should worry about, goes into entertainment, and then also entertainment. So that's all. If I had an app like that, heaven. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, app developers out there, are you listening?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. So anyway, I think the one thing I want to just kind of wrap up with saying, and probably the thing closest to my heart is attention literacy. And what I mean about that is learning to value your own and others' attention as a precious resource. Most of us, we take it for granted. And let's put it this way, no one will regret when they're on their deathbed that they didn't spend enough time, on Facebook, right? So, so when we're online, let's make it a powerful experience of mutual support and well-being that enhances one another in the world, and so I just want to appreciate my team and all the work they've put into this. They've been, just amazing, and all the support we've gotten from, the UN has really kind of held us, in a beautiful way to partner and to encourage us, and the Future Capital team, and then many of you who are on this call right now, and some who aren't on the call who registered so they could watch it later. They've emailed me about that. Have been really encouraging all along the way and have been supportive all along the way. And I think it's really important that we recognize that there is a really large community of people have mentioned in the chat. There's a large community of people who are already thinking this way. There are technologists thinking this way. There's the Institute for Advertising Ethics. They're on our working group. There's conscious advertising. There's what most people don't realize is there are people in the advertising agency who want to see these changes. There's people in technology world who want to see these changes. TJ's right here. There are people in policy, not just the UN, but in other areas who can create policy, local governments. I know FOSSA is working really closely with a lot of nonprofits, local governments, and small businesses to do this. So there are way more voices out there than anyone realizes because they're, kind of not pulled together. So part of what we want to do is really start to amplify the voices that are already out there and the work that people are already doing. And so at this point, what I'm going to say is that we've been operating on Future Capital and all our working groups on total volunteer, time. And we're now at the point where we're going to start trying to raise money and get donations in, and we just need some platforms so that we can actually do all the work, all the gathering together of those resources and get the word out and focus on this. So this is a new stage for Future Capital. I don't think any of you have ever heard us say that we're trying to raise money before. And so here I am saying it. We're trying to raise money, and Lawrence will be the person to reach with details about that if you or anyone can help support what we're trying to do out there with this. And we will get these principles to you and the link to the survey. And I think we have 1 minute left. Lawrence, I'm going to leave it for you to wrap up.
Thank you, Patty, and for the team. And I've been clicking to the right and to the left here in this virtual gathering and looking at just these beautiful, amazing souls that you guys are, and so highly accomplished and representative from all over the globe, and many different, stakeholding positions of expertise. So thank you for your attention. Of course, in line with that, we do want to end on time. What I do want to emphasize is that this is about community. What makes us special at Future Capital is we are about community and about inclusiveness and bringing people together. Your voice matters. Everybody has something to add that's here with us. Patty and the team at Future Capital and the working group will be in touch with all of you about the next meeting that you can come to participate in this, as well as the survey that Patty talked about. In general, we've got some great stuff that's going to happen this year with Future Capital. I won't spend the time on this now, but pay attention to the emails that come out. As you notice, we do respect your attention. Sometimes you don't hear from us for 6 months. And I hear some comments from some of our community. They're like, "You guys still around?" And I said, "Yes, but we don't need to bother you with like annoying emails where everybody gets too many emails. So we've been really doing some amazing stuff and some great progress, and we will be sharing that with you in the coming weeks.
Awesome.
Great, everyone. Thank
And
you.
maybe we like to end in a moment of silence as we start to bring our attention, to the matter at hand, and feel free just to bounce off when you're ready, and we'll just do it in silence and a community of connecting with each other. Thank you for coming.